In December 2023, 3 months after the United States and Vietnam became comprehensive strategic partners, Vietnam welcomed the China-Vietnam Community of Shared Destiny with a 21-gun salute of the highest protocol. The joint statement reiterated the two corridors and one circle framework and the cross-border standard railway connectivity between China and Vietnam after a year. The grand vision of the Pan-Asia Railway took a significant step forward, becoming the most tangible echo in Sino-Vietnamese cooperation. Connected by mountains and rivers with continuous economic and trade exchanges, why has there not been a high-speed rail link between China and Vietnam? What does the convergence of China and Vietnam's railways truly signify? This is an effort to reshape the international landscape in a century of unprecedented changes. As Sino-Vietnamese relations ascend, who stands to gain the most? Geopolitical forces are in flux, with the U.S. seeking regional balance in technology and resources, while China aims for regional cooperation in trade and resources. The convergence of these forces often reshapes the future of a region. Is this the future we all want to see? Let's explore this in today's discussion. Let's begin now. In recent years, as the Belt and Road Initiative continues to progress, the Pan-Asia Railway has been put on the agenda, serving as a crucial link in the connectivity between China and Southeast Asia. Once completed, this largest railway network in Asia will not only strengthen China's relations with its neighboring trade partners but will also reshape its land power advantage through the new Eurasian land route, creating more viable channels for outbound and maritime trade. Clearly, any action capable of reshaping the world's geopolitical landscape will face various obstacles, but it cannot stop the tremendous force of regional economic integration. In the midst of a new international order, just as the US, South Korea, and others are desperately trying to woo, Vietnam and China announced the construction of the China-Vietnam Community of Shared Destiny, putting their relationship at the forefront once again. The international shift signifies a turning point for the long-proposed convergence of China and Vietnam's railways. The Pan-Asia Railway takes another crucial step forward. According to relevant information, the Pan-Asia Railway consists of 3 lines: the East Line, the Central Line, and the West Line, connecting Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, Myanmar. Among these 3 routes, the Central Line of the Pan-Asia Railway is progressing the fastest. Starting from Kunming, it traverses Laos and Thailand, ultimately connecting with Singapore and Malaysia. Currently, the China-Laos Railway is operational. The first phase of the China-Thailand Railway is expected to be operational by 2027, and the second phase aims for use in 2028. On the West Line, the domestic section of the China-Myanmar International Railway, from Kunming through Dali to Ruili, has extended to Baoshan City, with the entire line set to open in 2025. The international section of the Mandalay-Kayakpiu Railway project is also progressing steadily. Thanks to the demonstration effect brought by the China-Laos Railway and the Yavuz Railway, the Pan-Asia East Line has finally made significant progress. The Pan-Asia East Line primarily connects China and Vietnam, with 3 main routes: one from Kunming through Laojia Strait to Hanoi and Haiphong in Vietnam, one from Nanning to Dongxing, connecting Mang Khai and Haiphong in Vietnam, and another from Nanning to Pingxiang, reaching Ton Dien in Vietnam and then to Hanoi. What does the convergence of China and Vietnam's railways truly signify? Unlike other regions such as China-Laos, China-Thailand, and China-Myanmar, China and Vietnam have had railway connectivity for many years, with channels extending from Yunnan to Guangxi leading directly to Vietnam. Over a century ago, Kunming established the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway, connecting channels to Vietnam's river mouth and Haiphong. 60 years ago, Guangxi, through the Pingxiang-Hanoi Railway, linked the capital Nanning to Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. However, whether the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway over a century ago or the Pingxiang-Hanoi Railway 60 years ago, both were not built to the standard gauge, 1,435 mm, used internationally and in China. Instead, they were constructed with meter gauge, 1,000 mm, or a mix of gauges. Meter gauge was a product of a specific era, designed for speeds only reaching a few dozen kilometers per hour. Not only did it differ significantly from high-speed rail, but it also lagged far behind traditional conventional rail, falling short of contemporary standards. A more significant issue arises from the differing rail standards. Due to the need for rail gauge switching at border crossings, there were significant time and cost implications for freight trains, preventing the railway cargo volume between the two countries from reaching its potential. Therefore, high-standard railway connectivity between China and Vietnam must be based on the construction of standard gauge railways, with the potential for further advancement towards a high-speed rail network in the future. Whether it's a conventional rail network or a high-speed rail network, China is well prepared, awaiting Vietnam to catch up in a timely manner. Recently, the high-speed rail from Nanning to Dongxing has entered the countdown for opening, and Dongxing is about to join the national railway network. As the only port city connecting China and Vietnam by sea and land, Dongxing is separated from Vietnam's Mong Khai by just a river. The distance from Mong Khai to Haiphong, Vietnam, is only over 200 kilometers. Vietnam, currently in the spotlight, has received multiple offers from Japan and the United States, both holding core technologies of the digital age, and of course, its comrades and brothers from China. Vietnam's first windfall comes from the shift of the global semiconductor industry chain. Recently, Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA, visited Vietnam for the first time. Media reports suggest that NVIDIA's investment in Vietnam is expected to reach $250 million. It's noteworthy that NVIDIA's previous semiconductor layout focused on the United States and Europe, with minimal emphasis on the Southeast Asian market. Many believe that NVIDIA's investment is not a simple transaction and may carry the shadow of the United States. In September 2023, during Biden's first visit to Vietnam, the topic of discussion was semiconductors. After that, Vietnam experienced an unprecedented wave of semiconductor investments. The relocation of the semiconductor industry to Vietnam is not a new phenomenon, often attributed to cheap but low-end labor. However, the arrival of leading companies like NVIDIA may bring about disruptive changes. Firstly, the new factories brought by semiconductor companies like NVIDIA may fill the gap in the design and manufacturing segments of Vietnam's semiconductor industry chain. Secondly, these companies bring technology and talent training, elements that Vietnam's manufacturing industry lacks in upward mobility. The increasing investments landing in Vietnam are propelling the country, once on the periphery, rapidly into the center of the global semiconductor industry chain. Just like hurricanes over the oceans, where the eye of the storm is often the calmest, Vietnam has found itself standing at the center of the storm in great power rivalry, seemingly navigating with ease. For China, it is inconceivable to watch the United States construct an industry chain near its doorstep, potentially influencing the global tech landscape, albeit unrelated to China. Consequently, China is bound to participate in this assistance competition, elevating its diplomatic status with Vietnam and providing crucial support for power infrastructure and investment needed for semiconductor production. While the West excels in speaking through technology, China excels in funding infrastructure projects. The denser the population of a country or region, the greater the public benefits that infrastructure can deliver. Southeast Asia, with a population of 600 million, boasts a population density as high as 223 people/square kilometer, compared to China's 148 people/square kilometer. In 1995, then Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir proposed the Pan-Asia Railway, which has now become a crucial component connecting China and Southeast Asia. In the Indochina Peninsula, the China-Thailand High-Speed Railway is completed, the China-Laos Railway is operational, and the China-Myanmar New Corridor is open. Even in Indonesia, the Thousand Islands country, China directly delivered a high-speed rail and it is already operational. Leveraging these connections with the China-Europe freight train services, Southwest China has gained more seaports, reinvigorating Eurasian trade. Now, the only missing piece in the Pan-Asia Railway is the railway connection between China and Vietnam. Therefore, when the China-Vietnam joint statement specifically mentions the convergence of China and Vietnam railways, it indicates that the entire puzzle is accelerating towards completion. In Vietnam's current 3,100-kilometer railway network, there are three completely different track gauges. The first gauge, known as meter gauge, has a width of 1 meter. The majority of Vietnam's domestic railways use this gauge, totaling 2,200 kilometers. These railways were built during the French colonial period, such as the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway, once hailed as the third largest engineering miracle in the world, constructed in 1910. The main issue with meter gauge is that its maximum speed lags far behind the times. The Yunnan-Vietnam Railway had a speed of only over 30 kilometers per hour, unable to maximize its railway transportation potential. While the freight speed on domestic meter gauge railways in Vietnam is slightly higher, it is still limited to 40 to 60 kilometers per hour. The second gauge is standard gauge, with a width of 1,435 millimeters. It is called standard because it is the internationally recognized standard gauge by the International Union of Railways. Around 60% of the world's railways use this standard gauge, which is also adopted by China. The third is a dual gauge line, with 1,000 mm and 1,435 mm coexisting. In the past, due to various reasons, the convergence of China and Vietnam railways was not pushed forward. But now, the situation has changed. Vietnam needs Chinese sponsorship for infrastructure, and China needs Vietnam as a new maritime gateway. Even more crucially, Vietnam is the world's second largest holder of rare earth reserves, second only to China. The railway connecting Haiphong and Kunming will pass through Vietnam's richest rare earth deposits. Rare earths are critical strategic materials for manufacturing a range of products from jet fighters to smartphones. While China already dominates the global rare earth market, a collaboration between the world's first and second largest rare earth nations would create a huge and stable resource stronghold for China. If NVIDIA's investment in Vietnam progresses successfully, it will create a scenario where NVIDIA and the US government provide technology and data, and China and the Vietnamese government contribute to infrastructure and related investments. In the future, Vietnam has the opportunity to leverage industrial chains brought by companies like NVIDIA and Intel, creating a Vietlink akin to China's successful introduction of Guolink and Tailink in the past. This envisioned future is not just a boon for Vietnam, but a mutually beneficial scenario for all involved. Vietnam stands to achieve increased employment, higher income levels for its citizens, and a boost in exports, contributing to its goal of becoming a high-income country by 2045. For China, it presents an opportunity to enhance resource reserves and potentially navigate around trade restrictions imposed by Western powers. By directing more raw materials to Vietnam for further processing before export, China can optimize its trade strategy. The United States, on the other hand, achieves regional resource and industrial balance. The semiconductor industry chain in Southeast Asia is varied, with countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand contributing differently. Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand may focus on research and development and design, Malaysia on silicon wafer production and equipment, and Vietnam could take on manufacturing and testing. This collaborative approach ensures no single entity dominates the entire industry chain. Companies like NVIDIA and Intel safeguard their market shares in both China and the US, ensuring stable profits while also diversifying risks within the industry chain. Of course, this is just one envisioned future scenario. Yet, it is a future that I believe most people would welcome. That concludes today's discussion, and we'll meet again in the next session.